A warm welcome and a very good evening to our panelists and our attendees for this session. This is a thought leadership session on technology disruption in trucking. In June, we had hosted a panel discussion on trucking through uncertain times, the road ahead. This was soon after the lockdown slowly started getting lifted. And today's session will be an extension wherein we will focus specifically on how the Indian trucking industry can achieve its full potential in terms of improving efficiency, productivity, and asset utilization and so on by leveraging different technologies that are either already available in the market and those expected to pick up pace over the next 3 to 5 years. As always, we have with us a carefully handpicked panel of speakers who will share insights on their respective areas of expertise within the trucking domain. So very happy to introduce our panelists before we get started with the discussion. We have with us Mr. Pradeep Kumar, who is Vice President Product Engineering at Daimler India Commercial Vehicles. Pradeep has over 2 decades of experience in the commercial vehicle industry and has been with Daimler for over 11 years. He's handled various roles such as vehicle integration for heavy-duty trucks, product planning at Daimler Trucks Asia, new product development, among others. And he will share interesting insights based on his experience and learnings, both from the Indian market and also from working on projects in other global markets. Thank you so much, Pradeep, for joining us.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Anjani Mandal. He is the CEO and co-founder of Fortigo Logistics. Fortigo provides a common technology platform with a mission to empower the Indian goods transportation industry ecosystem through technology and the power of networking. Mr. Anjani has over 28 years of experience in the industry, and he will bring in a unique perspective on the use of technology in the trucking and logistics space. Thank you so much, Mr. Anjani, for joining us. Next up is Mr. Mohit Mehrotra, who's the Managing Director and Business Head of Omnicomm India and South Asia. Headquartered in Moscow, Omnicomm is the global technology leader in precision fuel sensing and analytics with over 1 million fuel sensors installed across 110 countries. Mr. Mehrotra has over 25 years of industry experience, and he will talk about fuel sensing management in real time and other related areas in today's discussion. Welcome to you, Mr. Mehrotra, as well. Our last panelist is the youngest of the lot, Mr. Dipen Babariya, co-founder and CEO at RoadMetrics. As the name suggests, RoadMetrics is into the collection of road data. Dipen had once a bad commute experience while using Google Maps, and the reason was poor road conditions. He came up with a technology solution for this problem, and that is how RoadMetrics came into existence. RoadMetrics is a young company, but a very promising one that can add plenty of value to the trucking and logistics ecosystem by the use of technology. And that is where Dipen will add value to our session today. Thank you for accepting our invitation, Dipen. Lastly is our moderator for the session, Mr. Jinal Shah. He's Director at Power Systems Research for South Asia region. Jinal has over 15 years of work experience in market research and strategic consulting with expertise in competitive intelligence, business viability assessment, and entry strategies, and a number of other areas. For those of you who had attended our panel discussion in June, Jinal was our moderator for that same session, and we're delighted to have him back as a moderator today. Thank you very much, Jinal.
Thank you, Bala.
Without further ado, just a couple of more pieces of information for our attendees. As always, please feel free to post your questions to the panelists in the questions window. We will try to have around 15-minute Q&A towards the end of the session where the panelists will answer your questions. And also, as usual, this session is also being live streamed on Motor India's YouTube and Facebook pages. So over to Jinal for an engaging discussion.
Thank you, Bala and team, for the kind introduction and organizing this second series of the truck seminars as we had planned earlier. A very warm welcome to all the panelists and the attendees. As most of us resume life and work in graded shades, one thing looks certain: we need to be prepared for a state of perpetual disruption. When it comes to the trucking industry, we have been used to dealing with the pace of change that has been constant for decades. Changing fuel costs, increased regulations, driver shortages, capacity and fleet utilization challenges. Well, these issues definitely have an effect on the industry revenue, but they are not technically disruptive. If I exclude the last couple of years, the traditional approach has always been cheap, reliable, established product and performance metrics. And as a result, the industry was quite stable, while products and players may have changed. But how the industry conducted business hardly ever changed. And now I see there are distinct trends that are disrupting the way we look at trucking industry, logistics industry, and it is evident that technology is one of the prime drivers for the change that is happening and will happen in the transportation industry, impacting everything from the last mile connectivity to warehousing, right from track and trace to digital marketplace to customizations and safety aspects. It's probably changing dramatically the way goods are being moved in this country. Yeah, if I had to correlate this with the famous spillover effect, at the edge of every supply chain, there is an end customer. At an edge of every process, there is a user. And you have logistics partners and other stakeholders. I believe the focus is now moving to a more customer-centric operating model than ever before. I think so everybody in the panel and the attendees may agree that customers now are becoming more demanding. They need greater level of service and better products. And as a result, what we are seeing today are experiencing a collision of transformative technologies and influx of investments with the influx of a lot of startups in this domain. Now, today's webinar, I'd like to focus and understand from the expert panelists that what is the technological fitness that will be a prerequisite for success, and why is that the recent rise of technology now started having a profound impact on the transportation industry, right? And with this, I'd like to open up the panel discussion, beginning with Mr. Pradeep, and fellow panelists can raise their hands should they have any or should they wish to add any pointers to it and make it more interactive. So Pradeep, very good evening.
Good evening. Good evening, Jinal. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.
Pradeep,
thank you for.
Yeah, I just had some thoughts before you could we could expand this. As an OEM, the combination of increasing electronic content per vehicle, right? Connected devices, the emergence of smarter products and assets, always on things. Technology is opening up various possibilities today to resolve many problems that industry has been facing for decades, right? So as from your experience, and of course you carry a legacy of Daimler as well, what do you see, how could you integrate the global technological experience and customize it to the Indian requirements, especially when the operating and cost dynamics are significantly different here? Pradeep, your thoughts, please.
Yeah, so good evening again. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining this webinar. Jinal, yes, Daimler is globally a leader in and pioneer in terms of bringing technology, especially in the areas of safety and efficiency, which helps in terms of better trucking experience for our customers. And what we do in bringing these technology to India is we just don't copy paste because it's not going to work. So there are several reasons for that. One, India has a very variety of topography or geography. So we have conditions, coastal conditions, which are much humid, and we have high altitude conditions up to 4,000, 4,500 meters where the trucks operate today. And we have deserts with high temperature conditions where it reaches up to 52 degrees. So you talk about temperature range from -15 to +52, humidity up to 80, 90%, altitude from sea level to 4,000 meters. So that means then when you talk about whether it is with respect to engine performance, whether it is with respect to operating safety of the truck, how all the systems are integrated together, we have to consider all these extremes and define the specification for the market. So from that aspect, we have to do a lot of customization in terms of changing the systems or adapting the system, or even calibrating the systems to meet the requirements. And so, for example, there are some brake regulations for which you use the powertrain, so to meet the brake regulations. And this performance will vary based on the altitude. And then if you don't understand this properly, then it's not going to give a better experience to our customer. So from this aspect, the trucks have to be customized. Second, when you bring a technology to India, you have to make it as simple as possible so that it is easy for use, it is user friendly, and it can be serviced at a much easier pace. So from this aspect, we try to reduce the complexity of defining the system, reduce the number of sensors that is needed to do the same function, reduce the number of controllers. And third, you cannot avoid increase in electronics. So with the increase of regulations and then also increase of better efficiency by our customers, electronics will play a bigger role. And how you make the electronics user friendly is the third point which you have to consider when you bring technology to India.
Interesting. Pradeep, just to extend on that, you brought up two important aspects, different operating conditions that we have, and customization of those technologies to suit those operating conditions was one aspect. Second aspect, I read between the lines that brakes and regulations, right? Historically, most of the changes that we have observed in Indian industry is regulatory driven. So are we kind of a culture which is not driven by technology, and we need regulations to actually take it to the next level? Do you see some correlation? Because see, until 2017 we never even saw BS4. In 2020 we are at BS6, but a decade of no changes whatsoever in product technology, even if some of the customers, maybe your customers, are a little premium and advanced and they would have appreciated technology. But considering the entire landscape that we have here today, which is more of a small single operator kind of a trucking industry, how do you envisage the implementation of technology, the ROI and the viability dilemma?
Okay, so I take two questions from here. One, you're asking whether technology in trucking is derived or defined by regulation. right? Or is it only derived by regulation? And second,
historically it's
how
been that way.
okay, historically, and how do we see it way forward? And second is, with increase of technology, the cost goes up, and how we make sure that our customers get return on investment, right? So for the first question, uh, I will not go back to the history. I have a contradicting view, because there are examples of bringing new technologies, especially with respect to safety in the past. When I talk about past, it is even more than 25, 30 years back. So there are examples like that, but I will talk about the recent things. So within 6 months after we introduced BS4 in April 2017, we from Bharat Benz launched a Euro 5 variant in the market. Okay, so there was no regulation for Euro 5. So we have to take a Euro 5 truck and then certify it or test it and then get it certified as Euro 4. But it was over achieving the Euro 4 requirement because it meets Euro 5. And then we launched a Euro 5, especially in the medium duty city distribution segment, because we believed we can bring a difference, because between Euro 4 and 5 there is a significant reduction in terms of pollutants. Okay, so that way. Second, in terms of safety, we were the first ones in the country to launch a driver state monitoring system to our customers, which has a huge benefit in terms of reducing the accidents on the Indian roads. So that way, we are looking at bringing solutions or technologies even ahead of regulation, which will make sense for the society and for our customers and add value for our customers. And I believe technology and regulation has to be in a balance. So there are some aspects where you wait for the regulation to come, but when the regulation comes, then you try to overachieve the regulation. So if the regulation asks for X, you try to deliver X plus something so that you add more value to customer. This is one approach. Second approach is look at areas which are not addressed by regulation, but there is a use case where you can identify potential benefit to our customers in terms of safety or other aspects, and then work on bringing solutions. So both are possible, and then both has to be balanced, because we cannot keep on increasing the cost of the product, right? And then it, right or wrong, we are in an industry where we sell a product which is used as a basis for running the business. So it's very important to make it more efficient for our customers without compromising on safety and other aspects. So from that point of view, we have to balance between technology and regulation, and then see what is the optimal thing to bring to the market, so which will meet our customers' requirement as well. So second question, in terms of how do we take care of addressing our customers' return on investment with increase of cost with technology. So Bala was mentioning about the BS6 launch that we did in Jan. So we didn't just launch the BS6 emission change. So we launched our products with Profit Plus technology. So in which we focused on different pillars. One of the main pillar that we focused on is TCO improvement, total cost of ownership improvement, where we showcased products which give much better fuel efficiency compared to its predecessor, BS4. Second, we also reduced the maintenance cost of our trucks to a greater extent compared to its predecessor. So that means when we launched BS6 with the new technology, we made sure that the product is the most efficient compared to all its predecessors, which we have been selling in the market as BS4 or before as BS6, BS3. So from that perspective, we constantly strive to improve the total cost of ownership situation. That will help to balance the cost increase of technology with respect to technology, thereby help in terms of return on investment.
Sure. At this point, I'd like to bring in Mohit. Mohit, one could argue that transportation industry has been using bits and parts of technologies for quite some time. To my knowledge, Qualcomm used GPS fleet tracking way back in 90s, yeah, and electronic messaging has been around for decades. Pradeep mentioned TCO and fuel costs. How how do you think that when fuel accounts for almost 55 to 60% of the TCO, how would technology really support and enhance in contributing to better fuel management? Your thoughts, please, Mohit.
Right. Thanks, Jinal. So, Jinal, I will just take a step back and actually, before I answer your direct question on fuel, I will actually just go back to the first question which you asked as to what are the ingredients which is making a faster adoption of some of these things as we see right now. And I see that everybody who is here in this room and who represents different aspects of the industry, the one thing that's really changed for all of us is that there is an even greater focus on customer-centric business models. I think the whole industry, not just trucking, but everybody is moving towards a more customer-centric approach. And for decades, that didn't happen, right? Everybody had their beautiful beauty, their own horse, and everybody wanted to go riding on that, right? But now things have changed. What is also happening, why one of those aspects is that the individual truck buyer who used to be typically a 4 or 3 truck buyer, right, or a driver owner, is gradually getting replaced in some ways, either virtually or electronically or physically, by a larger buyer. You have the aggregators, here in the room. You also have large fleet operators who are now requiring a specific, productivity approaches from whatever fleet they're owning, right? So and the beauty is that now as OEMs, as manufacturers, we are all listening to those because of the pace of change and technology that's coming in the market. So that's the bedrock on which a lot of these changes are happening, right? And add to that the additional mix that today overall technology has improved, meaning today you have better compute available at the edge. So all of these devices and sensors are having far greater processing power, right? You have service providers. The other day I was talking to a panel where there were a couple of service providers, telco service providers, and now these people are getting very active, saying that I want to sell more M2M connectivity solutions, right? People are laying NB-IoT, networks, right? And so that's another one. The third one is you've got bigger platform players, the AWSs and the large aggregators coming up and saying, I want to get into this space because now the world is truly becoming billions and billions of sensors in the edge, and there's obviously greater compute that is needed to make all that happen. And regulation does play a role, and regulation plays a role in every market, not just Indian market, right? AIS 140 is good because it tells you that you got to have a couple of things in place, but worldwide the fastest penetration actually happens with regulatory change in this industry.
Absolutely.
So I think we should not be shy about that at all. I think there is nothing to be embarrassed about it, but I think it's some of these things are really all coming together and happening. Now, having said that, going back to your specific question on fuel, and I'll just give you an example of this customer-centric approach. Just the other day, we were talking to a large OEM who manufactures earth movers, and they have a beautiful system for managing and monitoring these earth movers. But when we spoke to them, we understood that their system can monitor their specific earth movers in a plant scenario, right, or in a site situation. But when you go and put yourself in the shoes of the end customer, and every customer has a portfolio of earth movers and a portfolio of trucks, right? You would buy one from, half of the fleet would be from one and the other. when you give a system which is closed and which a platform which is beautiful but which actually operates only on those sets of machines, how do you expect the operator to manage the entire fleet, right? And so the moment you put yourself in the shoes of the end customer, you immediately start to say there's an opportunity for aggregation, right? There's an opportunity to provide this. So coming back to your question on fuel, yes, 3 years back when we met and we talked about fuel, I was having my struggles. We would actually get into all of these meetings and people would say, show me that it works. And I think, we've come a long way since then, where today, and I see a lot of competition coming in, right? Which is good news, because it just tells you that the technology has reached a point where the fields are tilled, and now there is, people are ready to, sow seeds and reap the benefits. So I see greater adoption of some of these technologies. I see people no longer asking to prove that, oh, does it really work? But people now asking the next question, saying that, yes, I want to take this, but can you help me? Can you help me give better analytics so that I can not just know how much fuel has been pilfered by a unscrupulous operator, and we have a few of them, everybody has them, but tell me every time there is a filling, a refueling, tell me how much did I refuel vis-a-vis the fleet card that I swiped, right? And that's a problem which, when I look at the problem only from my beautiful platform, doesn't get addressed. I have to take the APIs from an Indian Oil, marry them with my technology, and give you an instant verification of how much you filled versus what your driver says has actually been fueled, right? So you have to think of these specific examples of doing things, and I gave you two of them. One about aggregation, the other one about how you need to have the whole ecosystem work together. So I will actually talk about and sort of bring attention to the panel to this point that for IoT to adapt rapidly now from the state that which we are in right now, there is tremendous need for us to actually now pull the whole ecosystem together, because lots of silos, lots of individual technologies, great point solutions, but we got to start thinking about again putting ourselves back into the customer's point of view, how we start to bring it together, how we as an industry start to operate in concert in some ways.
Absolutely fantastic. Thanks, Mohit. Mr. Anjani, Mohit mentioned about the importance of aggregating and standardizing and bigger platforms. About 60% of the economy's freight carrying needs are addressed by trucks today. It's no news, but with millions of trucks nationwide sitting idle and unhooked 80% of the time, it's time to probably take trucking out of the dark ages and into the digital world. How do you think we can capitalize on truck as a service? You have been to the space. What are your experiences from this perspective? How do you improvise the fleet utilization levels so that you can monetize the empty miles, and for shipper it is potentially reducing costs? So it's a fantastic proposition, but what have been your experiences on ground?
Getting the buy-in of all the ecosystem players is always a challenge. So when we started off back in 2015, it was a substantially higher challenge than now. And, like Mohit was saying, there are various external factors because of which disruption happens or changes happen. In this particular case, yes, regulatory, yes, but the reality is this, that there is also regulatory and other dimensions outside trucking where people are expecting some risk management for the last 2 or 3 years, where they say, I want to move into things which are more aligned to the future. I want to move things which will give me a continuous value add. I want to do things which will keep my risk mitigated. And I should be able to have operations which are there, because I cannot have someone who's here today and gone tomorrow. The consequence of this is that gradually startups included. And basically companies who were in the regulatory, within the regulatory paradigm, who often referred to as organized, started dominating the space. And the challenge, of course, was the acceptance within the rest of the space because we were asset light and there were many other asset light companies also. But the acceptance had to be based on a certain economic advantage which had to be provided, meaning that there's no differentiation between one provider than the other. You qualified better, and if there was a choice between you as an organized and unorganized, you would be chosen. The times have changed, and the current year has been one of the moving points, and that's because of the pandemic. Consolidation has happened. Supply-demand equation started changing from the time of pandemic for a while. Before that, the supply-demand equation had worsened, where the supply was significantly higher than demand. And they would cut corners all over the place, and everyone was taking advantage of that. Because when the cost differential is very high, you have a tendency of a different decision vis-a-vis when cost differential matters lesser and risk is more important. That's one of the reasons why the industry is correcting itself. And suddenly, there is a change in perspective of adoption of technology. Now, if the demand is going to be more powerful, it was more powerful, but the cost advantage was a bit too high. Now, the cost advantages make lesser sense, risk is more. You have to go to an organized player. When you go to an organized player, you have certain expectations. To meet those expectations, you have to have a supply line from the larger consolidated mass, which is different. And sure enough, because of the COVID, the moment the moratorium ends, I'm saying of the long distance trucking, 30% will be gone. And then it will be a slightly more supply demand balanced situation and more consolidated players. That's when the customer centricity will really take shape, because my current thesis is that the biggest disruption will happen with what a lot of you I heard. Acceptance of technology is not what it is. It's basically acceptance of the fact that there is one big out there who's sitting at the head of the table. He will define what I have to do, and I have to center my life around him, which all of us like to call customer centricity. But he's got economic power and he's got the value power, which is higher than anyone else. When he says, I need transparency and supply chain visibility, you give it to them. He says, you want to respond to me electronically, you will respond electronically. That's one of the biggest moves which I expect will happen over the next couple of years. This is happening because of a certain technology having changed. Sure, cloud computing came in, and sure, there are technologies where you could run from a single system across multi-tenanted. All those things are happening. But more importantly, this current situation of risk has changed the entire equation. Consequence of this, you can be asset light for a while, but it's possible that it's a mixed model which will finally work out. But the technologies which will come into play have to keep in mind one thing, that from the buyer perspective of the guy who's running the supply chain, it doesn't matter which truck it is. For him, it's a capacity and a price and a reliability. And he needs supply chain visibility. How to put it together, he will tell you. But he needs what is referred to as open technology. And that's what Mohit was saying, that if I have 75 trucks, I need all of them to be on my platform, which tells me where they are and whether they'll be in time, and where, more importantly, you tell me where is the control tower, which tells me this is my inventory in motion, and this is my working capital block, and this is how I can reduce it. Everyone is talking only in those terms. Why? Everything has shifted away from the dispatch and logistics manager to the supply chain boss and the business as a whole, and he drives the entire industry from there. We struggled for 4 years in trying to deploy tech. And then we said, first we need to adopt it ourselves. So we adopted all the tech ourselves. We became a service provider. We showed that it's possible to have a substantial advantage by being a digital logistics company, deploying technology. Our profitability is much higher, our returns are much higher, we serve the customer better, our final prices to the customer are no different from anyone else. And it's by deploying technology with very much lesser people, with higher efficiency and good supply chain visibility. When you have all this happening, that means you have an environment which is kind of balancing now with what the technology can deliver. So what we were trying to do 3 years back, the time is enough. When all these disruptions, technology adoption, information enhanced, being able to process a lot more information, focusing on my business of managing my cash cycle and my profitability is now the concern of most of the manufacturers. And that will happen with the deployment of technology. Because TCO is always important. Or the person who owns the vehicle, provided the guy can meet it. The reality is this, that there are some other things which are on the anvil, which are going to change a bit more. So I would say that the consolidation is one thing which has happened, digitalization is another. But we're going to see a tech revolution with electronic vehicles. Like Mohit was saying, it's not 10 years later, it's today. And over the next few years, I still expect that intercity is going to see a major shift towards electric vehicles. And that will change the entire thing. It will have a change in the driver mix as well. I expect there'll be a lot more women in the next 3 years that you'll be seeing driving in the cities. I've been to some small towns and I need to do a lot of that, and I did. The taxis and the three-wheelers are being driven by women there. And there are some heavy-duty trucks I saw in certain smaller parts in strange geographies where you would think it's underdeveloped. Women drivers drive heavy trucks. Those changes will come into the city with the EVs where things become more there. So that's my perspective on changes over the next few years, which I see adoption of technology, ability to change, not changing the fundamentals of the overall equation, which is of TCO, and the ability to be able to respond to the customer.
Mr. Anjani, sorry, I have a couple of questions overlapping your discussions. I'll come back to you soon. At this point, I'd like to bring in Dipen. Dipen, safety is non-negotiable. Actually, unfortunately, in Indian context, it's often overlooked subject. What do you think? How could technology support enhanced safety even before we wait for an autonomous world? How do you think we can improvise from where we are today using technology, safety for not only the vehicles but for the drivers and everybody on the road? Your thoughts, please, Dipen.
Yeah, of course, Jinal. So you are basically true. So safety is a non-negotiable. So according to the Autocar India report, so India tops in the world in the road crash death. In 2018, I think the road accident in India claims 415 lives. That's like a plane going down every single day of a year. But that would make the guideline, while this deadly statistic barely do. The situation is alarming because in 2018, road crash claimed over the 1.5 lakh of lives. Out of these, 15,000 road crash victims have been truck or the lorry drivers. In terms of the vehicle category, trucks and the lorry are involved in over 57,000 crashes annually. So we are more focused on the road information. So as you know that there are many fleet management solutions are present in the market, like vehicle tracking, route optimization, fleet maintenance, or the driver behavior analytics from a big companies like BlackBox, or a startups like Loginex or the FleetX, which are acceptable by industrial leaders like Tata or Reliance. But at RoadMetrics, we are focused on the road characteristic information or the road safety. So by providing, I think, a detailed road characteristic information like road signs, Indian standard road signs, road length, if the road is accessible by truck or not, highly accurate road map, and also at last the road condition alerts to the drivers, of course. We try to provide efficiency in the data heavy model. So as you can see that this all sums up to the ADAS system, Advanced Driver Assistance System. I know that in Advanced Driver Assistance System is not much familiarized with Indian trucking industry right now, but it's a proven model from the Europe and the US market, which achieved over the 5% of fuel saving and also the 15% of road safety. So this by creating the data heavy model, so this advanced driver assistance system would be the first step for the self-driving operation in India. So this type of connected platform, if we would like to provide with the data heavy model by mapping all the road characteristics, detailed road characteristics, and getting connected this type of information to directly the drivers or the fleet management, then I think we would achieve this type of road safety for India. And I think as for the recent interview given by the Mr. Nitin Gadkari, so I think ADAS might get mandatory by 2022. That was stated by the Nitin Gadkari in the recent interview. So that's where we stand at right now for the road safety for India.
So Dipen, if I understand correctly, you're talking about the adoption or mass scale adoption of the proposition that you have in an ideal scenario where you have a connected world and you know, maybe at a 4G or a 5G era where you have a better V2V, V2 infrastructure, vehicle to infrastructure kind of a connectivity, right?
Yeah, of course.
But that's, you know, I maybe off the track, but what is the level of problem that we are trying to resolve here? You know, the new vehicles account for 4 to 5% of the new vehicle sales, or an in-service population accounts for almost 95 to 98%. So the real problem is in-service and not the new vehicle sales. So with this new technology, is there any way that the existing in-service population could adopt this technology and avoid the you know, or improve the safety standards in India? Any thoughts that your technology could be retrofitted, or you know, I don't know, for lack of better word, how would you integrate into an in-service population?
Yeah, of course. So yeah, Jinal, so it's not about the hardware or the new vehicle that we have to adopt. So it's the data that we are trying to get connected. So as you know that everyone right now has a smartphone, right? So by just one small application, if we would able to connect those data with the drivers, get alert to the drivers, and as you know, the 5G is also the expected to provide end-to-end connectivity across all the cities. So it would be the vehicle to vehicle or vehicle to infrastructure, or increase the fleet visibility, can also translate into a better safety or reliability. So drivers, I think in both public and private fleet can stay contact during the emergency or get real-time notifications of the adverse road condition, or enabling them to reroute their trip dynamically if needed. So rerouting is only one example of the increased efficiency that we can expect from 5G enabled transformation. V2I communication can enable vehicle and transportation infrastructure to work seamlessly with each other. Traffic light can adapt dynamically around the traffic flow, adjust the light to minimize the unnecessary delay. On the highway, convoy of the connected vehicle can form a mini clouds communicating with each other to warn the vehicle behind of the fluctuation in the road, and to maintain a steady distance between each other. And as the self-driving vehicle become the reality, this V2V or V2I advance can help make us the autonomous driving algorithm safer and more reliable. So that sets the stage for a series of transportation advance that cloud transform the road of the future into the very different or the roads safer place, I think. So I think that nearly after 125 years after the first vehicle was road tested, our journey to the future has only just begun.
I would love to see the future that you have painted into reality anytime soon. You know, I'd like to come back to Mohit on this point. You know, what do you see as a quicker adopters of technology? Do you see with the rise of e-commerce, informed customers, do you see the adoption of technology in last mile delivery, specifically with telematics, is faster than the other segments? Where do you see a good traction in terms of technology adoptions? Because it's easier that fleets understand that aspect very, very clearly. But in terms of segmentation, how would you say early adopters here today?
So actually, there are multiple segments where we see a higher adoption of these kind of technologies. I will, of course, be biased towards our own features, because that's our real experience. And for example, we've seen that irrespective of whatever we talk about telematics, the one big elephant in the room is fuel, right? And it's a huge drain on the bottom line. It's a bigger contributor to cost, 40% of cost, etc. So we found that very often when we talk to truckers, when we talk to machinery users, we find that often is a pain area. So in our experience, we've seen that mostly when we start a conversation, this is an important calling card. It does give us many times a seat on the table and gets things started. So that's one. But coming back to your question around last mile, right? So we've seen, yes, okay, who drives last mile? So last mile logistics is really driven today by e-commerce, and e-commerce players are large aggregators, right? And they like to run efficient businesses in every respect. And to that extent, they are constantly looking at extracting every ounce of efficiency in the whole system. So we've actually seen real use cases where today, definitely with, for example, earlier we used to say that fuel sensors are relevant only for very large trucks, because you consume more fuel, your shapes of the vessels are bigger, and that's where the problem is easier to resolve. But then just a year and a half ago, we were approached here in Bangalore by a last mile aggregator who had a fleet of Tata Aces, right? They had about nearly 200 Tata Aces and Mahindra Boleros, and these small vehicles with tank sizes of less than 60 liters, right? And yeah, so our standard thing was, look, don't try our sensors for those, because that falls into the light motor vehicle category almost, right? But then we tried it, and we got good results. And I'll give you an example of what really did. So this transporter or logistics aggregator with whom we were working works for a very large e-commerce company. And the e-commerce company obviously is very keen to extract efficiencies, and they approached us and they wanted to save productivity, and they actually, fuel was a big concern, so they came to us. We did a few pilots, things looked good. Then finally we decided to roll it out to the entire fleet. Now we visited them again, and we keep on checking on clients to see how things have been doing post the technology. A couple of things came out for us. One of them was that contrary to what they thought, that theft is a big driver of these type of technologies, they actually found it was not theft, which was, yes, theft did get controlled, but the whole digitization of the fueling operation was for them the bigger driver than incident called theft, right? Every morning they mentioned, for example, they would have about 50 trucks lining up in their yards and wanting to refuel. And the director of the company told me that I had to just get a stub of 50 fuel receipts to sign, and I would sign these blindly and not knowing what's really happening down below in the basement, right, where the trucks are leaving. He says, now with this everything on a dashboard, and there I know how much fuel is there in every vehicle at the start of the day. He says, I've completely delegated that to the dispatch team, because I know that there is a digital record of how much is there in every vehicle. I know what their trip sheet says today, what they're going to do, and the algorithm just tell them how much fuel they actually need. So there is no manual decision making. There is no comfort of having a director sign 100 fuel slips, for example. And so today, when we come back to them, they say it's digitization of our fuel supply chain, which is the most important reason, because I can pull up any record and there is a trail in the system. Now, this is an example, one segment, right, which is an emerging segment and one on which we've latched on clearly because we see our technology solutions can deliver. A classical segment is an over-dimension cargo operator, right? An over-dimension cargo operator, typically every project of theirs, every round trip is like a project, right? And every trip is like a 2,000-kilometer trip where they might consume something like 3,000 liters of diesel, right? So they're talking of huge quantities of fuel. And so, and no two trips are the same in very many times, right? So there, it's even more important for them to get an exact read of what's the actual consumptions. We find that people in these segments have rapidly adopted to things faster than, let's say, market trucks, right, which can be hired and sort of be hired by the day. So that's our example of where we see.
Well, thanks, Mohit. Interesting perspectives of the last mile learnings that you had. Pradeep, what I gauge from here is, it's easier to have right products, right technology, skills. That's one part of the story. But what I weave through your, Mohit's and Mr. Anjani's discussion is that having the right strategy is even more crucial. You mentioned at the beginning that India has its unique challenges in terms of different operating conditions, integrating and customizations of those that will suit each particular vehicle category. How do you see that you will need a certain scale of operation for adoptions or viability of such technologies from the customer's perspective? Like, would you see that customer with say 100 or 200 trucks will be more adaptable to this technology, and hence the viability for you to offer that? Now, with that perspective, out of all those technologies we are talking in next 3 to 5 years, which are the technologies in the trucking space you feel are going to be very, very prominently seen as a standard feature? Your thoughts? Pradeep, did you hear?
Jinal, can you repeat the last few sentences?
Yeah, I said having the right product, right skill is one part of the story. Having the right strategy, knowing the on-ground situations, like different operating conditions, different customer segments, different buying powers. Out of these, most of the technologies here are to offer one or the other solution. Which of these technologies you think are going to be largely seen in the next 3 to 5 years, according to your perspective, as a very standard feature?
Yes, yes, Jinal. See, basically, technology is an enabler, right? So technology is an enabler or a platform which is used to meet some purpose or a target. So let's go back to the purpose or the target, which is important for a trucking business. Okay, so the trucking industry has 4 important purposes that we should work on. The first and foremost one is meeting the CO2 and pollution related targets, basically emission related targets, which is also our national's target. Second mission or second purpose is meeting our government of India's target to reduce import of crude. So government of India has a target to reduce import of crude by 10%. So this is second. Third target is to add more value to the ecosystem. That means bring more efficiency to all the stakeholders in the industry. And fourth, and not the least, is take care of safety of all the stakeholders, safety of drivers, safety of operators, safety of public on the road, everything. So these are the 4 important targets or purposes which we have to meet or we have to continue to meet and then improve every year or every day? And if you see for next 3 to 5 years, all these four will have equal weightage, because all four are equally important for us. As Daimler, we focus on all these four elements, and we also see Government of India putting lot of stress on all these four elements. You see all the policies that Ministry of Road Transport brings will be touching one or the other of these four targets. So from that perspective, any technology that will help in terms of improving the efficiency. When I say improving the efficiency, reduce the cost of operation, reduce the time of operation, do more for less. So these kind of technologies, any technology that gives a better or lesser pollution to the cities and to the country, and also safety, these areas will be the focus. So, and in those areas, which technology or which feature, there are a lot of things. So we cannot discuss all those technologies here, but it will be in these areas where the focus will be for the next few years, for whole trucking industry to focus on.
Interesting. If I correlate this with Dipen, he comes as an outsider into the industry with a solution. Interestingly, this problem has been around. The road safety or the road characteristic issues have been here for decades. Interestingly, none of the legacy OEMs have really focused from that perspectives, and here we are seeing some startups who are actually learning out of their own experiences and coming out with a solution. Do you see influx of this startup as more collaborative or competitive? Are you willing to use your scale, your reach with their understanding or solution which is readily available, or would you go your own way for certain reasons? What are your thoughts?
The answer is it depends. So there could be some core competencies or core strengths where we will go our way. So that doesn't mean that we will always go our way. The future is definitely more collaborative. So it depends on the mission or the target.
Sure.
Can I offer a perspective here?
Yes. Sure.
Yes, Mohit.
So actually, I think this is all the time for collaboration. I mean, to be honest, truck manufacturers and OEMs make the best of the, they have the best of the legacy and the power to invest. But I think multiple examples that I talked about and my panelists have talked about requires an approach of collaboration today more and more. IoT by its very nature, look at the structure of the industry. You have a million trucks, well, 10 million potentially today, a million of these with sensors, and these sensors need repairs. These sensors need installation. They need calibration, right? These sensors and devices are sometimes in, the truck is in Nagaland, and the next 5 days later it's in Kanyakumari, right? And so, and then there is this very large number of small startups who are telematic startups, so to say, right? And everybody has got feet on street, everybody has got capabilities to do it, and each one is trying to run his own little silo, trying to run a little platform. Absolutely. And do this, right? At the same time, owners tell us that, yeah, I mean, I would love to buy everything from an OEM, right? I would love to the truck to come with all this factory fitted, so that I don't go around shopping, right? And find the left shoe, two left pair of shoes, right? That kind of thing. But the reality is, when you go to install these things, you find that in a truck there will be 5 trackers, right? And none of them talk to each other. So I think why I propose collaboration is because I think OEMs should use the opportunity to say, I will fit these stuff and give contracts to a lot of these system integrators to actually be your service partners, because they will get stuff done for you all across the country, right? And and build give you those little insights which are crucial for making the products more powerful, right? But you can still have the large platform.
Yes, Mohit, if you see, say for example, if you go and see some trucks that are running in US, so you can see at least 5 or 6 different trackers, each having its own purpose. They do some work and then it helps in terms of efficiency or something else, but it becomes complex, because as you said, because each service provider's unit doesn't talk to each other. So you can have one screen with a common protocol, then you can have all the service providers talking to each other, and then you only have one screen. That's a much better solution. So from that perspective, there are 2 things. One is partnership or collaboration. So basically, partnership or collaboration is trying to balance the strengths of each other and then bring a better solution to the customer. That is what we talk about in terms of partnership or collaboration. So from that perspective, in areas where it is needed, yes, it is very important. There is the second aspect is also on having a common protocol or platform, like for example, how you have standardization done in some areas, mainly in terms of connected platforms or connected vehicle platforms. It's very important that we have common platforms which can talk to each other. So then it becomes easier for different providers to offer solutions, and then that is user friendly to the customers.
I'm sure Mr. Mr. Mandal, that's exactly what you're trying to do, right? To just get everybody onto that platform.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Mandal, on this point, I'd like to come back to. I know, Dipen, you wanted to add some point. Just give me a moment. Mr. Mandal, you mentioned that okay, truck aggregator platforms and bring in supply chain visibility, transparency, efficiency. But you also mentioned being asset light and becoming asset light and becoming an aggregator also throws up certain challenges like addressing the trust or due diligence issues. You are basically asking a shipper to load in the hands of potentially unfamiliar carrier or driver every time. So do you see that trust deficit within the users or inhibition of your customers to just load, unload in any truck that's coming in empty miles? Your thoughts?
It's just a tick box for them. And they can do risk.
Sorry, you're not audible.
Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yeah, it's a little bit of echo, but we can do with it.
Okay. So there is absolutely none. In the initial stages, before people started understanding that due diligence is done by every startup company or every aggregator, as you're calling them, because it's nothing new, this aggregation business. Transporters have been doing this for the last 15 years. Don't own all the trucks. Never have we had. And the proof of the pudding is this. I think 90% of, let's say 100% of the large shippers, 100% of the large shippers who are credit worthy and pay in time, we are serving them and we don't have any problem whatsoever in making it to the RFQ stage. We just state upfront, we don't own trucks, we do the validation in the same fashion that you do for everyone, because it's the norm. Every transporter who's serving the large customer, his purpose is basically the cushion in between. So no, there's no trust deficit. They assess you for your risk and not the truck. What you do in the background in terms of linking in with the identification of the person, the PAN number of the what we call as who is the owner, who is the the truck, is it going to take a legal trip? Are its documents complete? Are the licenses complete? is a driver okay? Okay, and if all these four are all right, then the organization, the owner of that truck, the truck driver, and the asset itself, if all of them are okay, it's risk mitigated in any case. So that process works, doesn't matter for any large company. We have a question like I was saying. Does that answer your question?
Yes, partially I could hear, honestly. Rest was a little difficult to hear, so I'm not sure if.
Is this any better?
Sorry, you said something?
Is this any better? No.
No. Sorry, I'll come back to you later. Dipen, I think so. You raised your hand. Dipen, you wanted to add some points, right?
Yeah. So about you asking about the collaboration. So I will just share my experience from what experience I got from the market. So as we have mapped the whole Bangalore city right now, and as planning to map the 10 tier 1 cities and go ahead. So we got inbound interest or the initial interest from so many companies like insurance company, logistic company to use this type of data for their in-house operation. And one interesting information, Mr. Pradeep, that recently we also got associated during March. We also got associated by Daimler India, by Abhishek Rai, regional manager at Daimler Ahmedabad, for using our application or the data for alerting the drivers of ground fleet of the Daimler, alerting the drivers of impending road condition for transporting the fragile goods or the electronic goods. So this type of data heavy model are accepted by the industry, and by this experience we are getting the collaboration type of model from a market also. So that's what I wanted to say.
So you have a customer in the panel itself. Good for you.
That's what I say. I don't know that Mr. Pradeep was aware of this, but yeah, Abhishek Rai from Ahmedabad, regional manager. So we are in contact with them. So we got associated during March, early March, pre-COVID time. So because of the COVID, you know that everything has put on us on hold as per the operations also. So till now, yeah. So till now we have been also on hold, but now we have been resuming the conversation as we go.
Well, it's good that we are seeing adoption of technologies, at least for niche applications, like you rightly said, carrying fragile, consignment was a classic example of your technology in use, which is very, very interesting. I believe we are just nearing to our Q&A time. So before I open up the session for Q&A, from all this discussion, what I realize is there is certainly more to come with respect to technology and disruptions as companies seek out ways to work smarter, better, faster, and more so in more increasing complex situations of manufacturing, distribution, retail environments. I think so technology, like Pradeep rightly said, will serve as a facilitator and a disruptor also. So it's very important point to absorb and integrate into our strategic planning, and that's not just about bringing in disruptive technologies alone, but it is also at the same time culture that we need to have, and dealing with essential challenges like some of those that Dipen mentioned and Mr. Anjani mentioned with regards to fully technologically ready, so that we have more happy customers. With this, Bala, over to you. I'd like to open up the panel for Q&A, if any. Thank you.
Just
Thank you so much.
can you hear me now?
Yes, sir, very much.
Yeah, go on.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Anjani, do you want to add any point?
Just an audio check, because Jinal was not able to hear me. Just an audio check.
All right, sure. Yeah, thank you so much to all of you for a very, very engaging discussion. Thank you, Jinal, for steering through the discussion. Yeah, as usual, some very interesting questions have come in from our audience. I'll probably start with Pradeep. a specific one related to in-vehicle payments. Is in-vehicle payment going to be a big play for OEMs for transaction at petrol pumps and service stations through digital means? What is your take on this?
Yes, Balam. My take is it's going to be the future. So we at Daimler in Europe is already working on it, and I see that more and more cashless transactions with in-vehicle payments will be the future. So that will also help in terms of reducing the burdens that fleet managers or fleet owners have in terms of handing over cash with the drivers. So because the trucks go to all parts of the country, and then at any point of time, drivers should have the possibility of addressing some of the needs, like topping up the fuel or changing some parts. So in-vehicle payment will ease the life of fleet managers, because they need not handle physical cash or have the burden of having cards for each driver, etc. It will simplify the process because the truck can pay by itself.
Right, interesting. Mr. Mohit, since related to fuel, would you want to add something on this?
Sorry, no, I didn't get the question. The question was on in-vehicle payments, right? So yeah.
That's right. That's right.
So actually, cards is obviously the future. And today, for example, in our platform, we are integrating all kinds of the technologies available to integrate with cards. I think there is a need to work with, and we are already doing that, work with oil marketing companies, where they're able to give APIs. At the moment, what they do, they give APIs only to customers beyond a certain size. So that's a bit of a friction. But I'm sure once they become more open to the idea of giving APIs for fuel, a lot of this can be integrated.
Interesting. Next question. Yes, Mr. Anjani.
So change had happened in 2016 itself, Mohit. We didn't have any problem with any of the OEMs as things stand right now. Each and every one on our network has the ability to pay. And there's a concept of virtual cards which has been operating for the last 3 years. Not a single driver, since we are in long distance transportation, average revenue per trip is 50,000. Rarely does he carry more than 2,000 rupees in his pocket at any point of time. Everything is limited virtually, and it goes straight to his virtual account. He walks in, or he drives in, more like it, into a fuel pump. He gets that and he drives through straight without a problem through the toll booth. He doesn't stop anywhere. So correction, he does stop at the nakas. That they don't need to stop anywhere other than for their own food. But digital payments is what we started as the first service back in 2016. I don't know how many crores every month we move of digital money through our platform.
Right. So actually, great to know. So we should probably converse on this, because we can then give you the ability to instantly check. Yeah, exactly.
Interesting. Great. Mr. Mohit, one from a technology perspective, your thoughts on the scope for variable valve actuation in Indian trucks? Because globally, there have been test reports that have reported around 10% improvement in fuel efficiency. So any thoughts on VVA, either from Mohit or anybody else from the panel?
Sorry, I don't have the technology expertise to talk about that.
Pradeep, would you like to comment on the same?
This is related to two-wheelers, right? The two-wheeler.
No, I think it's for heavier vehicles as well. Probably it's too nascent for the Indian market. We'll probably park that for the time being. That's okay. Mr. Mohit.
Commercial perspective, if you're interested, I can give you a commercial perspective. The question which operates between the transporter and the driver over a period of time has changed. Rather than to make sure that the fuel is not being stolen, and when they have the correct driving practices, they have a flat amount which they define with them, and the rest is left to the driver's skill. And they really don't care so much about what the fuel consumption is as long as their ends meet. The give out there is very much smaller. There are bigger problems which have a larger impact than the little gives. Over a period of time, if things are far more stable and the overall market situation itself was much better with respect to supply and demand, and the lending rates were very much lower, the business was more predictable, we would see a lot of difference. But the number of trucks owned by themselves and driven in terms of long distance at least, not in terms of the lot of other businesses, they seem to be slightly less bothered about final technologies. For them, it's cost. Can I make my living? Can I serve my customer and offer them a competitive price?
Right. Thank you.
A very biased view. I'm sorry.
That's right. Yeah. So one important stakeholder obviously is the truck driver, right? So what technologies do you think are already existing, are probably going to be coming up in the near future that will directly make the lives of the truck drivers better? Obviously, that will also help bring in more professional drivers into the ecosystem, address the driver shortage issues. And another interesting part of the question, what is the role of the driver in the entire TCO for an operator? So probably Mr. Mohit or Pradeep, if you want to take these questions.
Pradeep could take the first one.
Yeah.
Okay. So see, there are three aspects of how we can help driver in terms of participate in the in this whole ecosystem, and then by which also we help in terms of meeting the targets of the four aspects that I mentioned. First one, by giving him a good, comfortable workplace. Okay, so when I say workplace, you give him a seat which is very comfortable, which has a suspension separately. You give a cabin with a good HVAC system, which ensures that he has a comfortable workplace. Third, you give a very good suspension system for the cabin and the truck, by which then the fatigue that a driver sees will go down. So when his fatigue goes down, his alertness will be better. So, and this will help in terms of safety on the road. When he is alert, the chances of accident reduces. When he is alert, then he can focus on his driving, and then he can drive at the optimal areas of the vehicle, by which then he can improve or deliver a better fuel efficiency. So one is giving him a better workplace. Second element is also giving him the right kind of training or awareness in terms of how to leverage the technology in the product to deliver the maximum value. So giving him the right training in terms of what is the optimal shifting, optimal driving pattern, do's and don'ts in his driving conditions. So because as we said, India is a varied geography or topography. So for his exclusive condition, giving him the right inputs in terms of how he is driving and how we can improve will help in terms of, again, maximizing the efficiency. Third, we should stop seeing him as a person outside who is a medium to move the vehicle from a place to the other. So we have to see driver as part of the ecosystem. And then, so we now have fleets where there are cameras installed inside, which is always watching the driver. Who in this panel will be willing to have a camera in your office which is watching you when you're working? No one of us, right? So we have to see him as part of the ecosystem and then bring empathetic technologies that will enable him or assist him during the driving. So by which we can bring more accountability to him, and by which then we can make the entire ecosystem work in a much better way. So these are the three aspects.
Pradeep,
Wonderful,
actually,
Pradeep.
I would really compliment you on the last part, because this is one problem with everybody's attitude in the industry, that we have control towers which are supposed to keep watch on the drivers, as if the driver is a mule and not a human being, right? In fact, I know through our work in the ecosystem, we know that there are some of our technology providers, some of our own partners, who are developing excellent technologies for driver assist technologies, right? Because in we all talk of driver monitoring, right? We all talk of safe driving behavior, but who's telling the driver in real time, hey, you took a sharp turn, next time please take care that you don't take a sharp turn, right? So why should he be pulled up when he comes back to the base station, right? Instead, why doesn't the system tell him that, next bend, score more points by taking a more gentler turn, right? And when you score 10,000 points, we'll put 100 rupees in your wallet, right? Or something like that. So those things are, I think, and some of people are already beginning to do in that, move in that direction. I've also heard a few companies coming up with things like driving videos, when drivers, based on observing behavioral aspects of driving, the system kind of learns the driver's lacunas, and then pushes a video which assists him in driving better. So people already, such technologies are in place. The driver is the human being, not the mule.
Yeah.
But I'd like to add some points to Pradeep and Mohit.
Sure, Jinal.
While we may think of a driver as a provider of point A to B solution, in midst we are talking about his efficiency, his comfort, fine, but there are technologies like, we are still a manually driven truck market, right? AMTs will ease out his pain of driving for 8 hours substantially. So like Pradeep said, making the product itself more lucrative for somebody to be a part of a driving ecosystem, right? Nobody wants to be a trucker here today because it's terrible driving conditions. As an ecosystem, what we could do is at least offer them AMTs or ATs, which will give them a peace of mind for driving longer journeys. Two, I see there was an opposition on the air conditioning norms that was trying to put it. That was unfortunate from the diverse perspective. You may have a supply side perspective, but that's what happens when you look from supply perspective. You lose the intermediaries, drivers, which is the most important connecting point. And hence, I think so, air conditionings and AMTs and the rest of the education and roadside assistance or better living conditions are already been taken care by many of the OEMs that I'm aware. But these two things are some things can change, and maybe have more women drivers. It's a male dominated era, space. So these two things can change this problem significantly.
True, Jinal. True, very true. I mean, transmission and probably safety as well. Dipen, I'd like to bring you in probably the question. What is the level of adoption of RoadMetrics solutions in the Indian market? I mean, can you throw little bit more details on the same?
Yeah. So for the Indian markets, it's been hard to accept this type of technology has been updated. So as you know that right now every 60% of the car have the inbuilt navigations like Android Auto or the Apple CarPlay. So in which they are the map applications. Main the map providers are Google Maps or Map by India. So who lack this type of data like road characteristic data, which are very much acceptable, street signs data, road conditions data. So I think we still have a long way to go, but by partnering up with mobility companies like right now we are working with Renault, Nissan, Mitsubishi to include this type of data in that inbuilt navigation system only. So users get alerted while they are planning the trip or while they are on the journey also. So I think if we are we are just focused more on the creating a data heavy model by collecting the whole India data, of course, by collecting the all Indian roads, and afterwards we'll see how this data can be useful by various of these companies like logistic companies, mapping providers, or the mobility companies, of course.
Okay, right. Mr. Anjani, there's a question. Will technology adoption by small fleets act as a catalyst for a consolidation in the Indian logistics space? I mean, towards more organized, transparent, and a real-time optimized business operations. What is your take on this?
Well, the way things are emerging, they won't have a choice. And they will be responding electronically. They'll be providing the requisite supply chain visibility, which are the two most important things. And given that that is what it is, the only barrier there is the driver. And the driver is also now aligning. To your earlier question, my mind dwelt on that. And our perspective, the driver is the single most important point and risk point in that. The issue is this, that out of the 20 lakh long distance shops, there are 16 lakh drivers, and there are maybe about 4 lakh owner drivers. Those 16 lakh, more like 18 lakh, they are paid 17,000, but they have to earn about 25,000. That's where the root cause of everything is there. Until just before COVID-19 pandemic, I'm talking of as late as Jan 2020, most of the long distance drivers had smartphones. They would never give that to their owner as a number or never use that. But throughout the time, the guy would be on WhatsApp with his groups and so on and so forth. So that's the reality of things, but things have changed very rapidly after that. And there's a far more heavier adoption, including by the driver, including by the small fleet owner. They respond electronically, they need more business, they need to be more efficient, and that's how it's going.
I'd like to add.
Yeah,
if I understand rightly, the question was, will technology enhance consolidations? Is that correct?
Right.
I feel it will be other way around. So unless consolidations happen, technological adoptions wouldn't happen. So we need larger fleets to adopt technology. It will not be other way around. So consolidations, once they start happening, technological penetrations will increase.
So that's the chicken and egg. Both are realities today. So innovation is happening, technology adoption is happening. Frankly, at this stage,
we are halfway through the consolidations thanks to COVID.
Yeah, exactly. It's a definite chicken and egg story time, right? Pradeep, a couple of questions for you. I mean, one is on an expected line, but what is your take from a Daimler perspective on EV adoption in the trucking space, in India particularly? Pradeep, we're not able to hear you.
Sorry.
Yeah.
If you see in the Indian perspective today, the EV adoption is gaining pace in two-wheeler and three-wheeler, and then slowly in four-wheeler as well. So from adoption point of view, the next step for EV adoption will be the small commercial vehicles. So the sub 1 ton or 2 or 2.5 ton category of trucks. Because for these trucks, the range with the current technology that is available will not be a challenge. And the payload will not be a big compromise with the battery packs that we have in the market. So it will start from the light duty, and of course buses are already gaining pace. You see some cities adopting the city buses especially. But when it comes to medium and then heavy duty trucks, it depends on how the technology progresses. So what will happen for the future? Whether a full battery-powered powertrain will be sufficient, or we need range extenders in terms of fuel cell or other technologies. As we speak, now we as Daimler have unveiled our fuel cell truck in Germany. So for heavy duty trucks, it will be more with range extenders, possibly with a combination of fuel cell. That will be the way the technology will get adapted. On what time scale is a big question. No one has a crystal ball which can clearly tell in what time scale it can happen in India. We have to see how things move and then start making some hypotheses in the coming years.
Okay. Thank you, Pradeep. One from a supplier perspective, I pose it to you because it's also a challenge for the OEM. Of the rate at which technology is evolving, it also quickly obsoletes existing technologies. So how do people in the supply chain actually prepare for such an environment? And also probably any areas where suppliers should be investing in with respect to technology?
Actually, I do not fully agree with the first statement of the rate at which the technology is evolving. The rate at which the technology also gets obsolete. The foundation or the fundamentals of the technology doesn't get obsolete. So you have a controller manufacturer or you have a sensor manufacturer. The basic principles or technology principles will remain the same, and he has to continue to reinvent himself to make them better and better, or efficient and efficient. So from that perspective, the technology only gets better, right? So from this I'm telling from the supplier's perspective. And which areas to focus or which areas to invest. So for the future, see what's going to happen. So with more electronics coming inside the truck. So if you take a truck from 20 years back, the share of raw material based parts or commodity based parts will be much higher. So I don't know, maybe it is even to the tune of 80 or 90%. I'm not an expert in all these mathematics, but today it has reduced already. So even compared to BS4 2017 to 2020, the share of raw material based components in the truck has reduced, and going forward this will reduce further. So what will happen? The share of electronics, the share of controllers, all this will increase. So with this change, there could be suppliers who are purely raw material based. And they have to look at how they can expand their portfolio. And more important, when the share of electronics increases, there is a big window of opportunity coming in. And do we have the right kind of R&Ds, right kind of capacities, right kind of manufacturing available in the country? I would say not 100%. So we still depend on a lot of imports from other areas, and this is one area where we should look at investing a lot, making automotive grade electronics and controllers, which can help, which will become a bigger share, and then which can help in terms of also our government's mission in terms of making our self sufficient. And then also this is a big potential for from the supplier perspective in the future as a growing business possibility.
Wonderful.
Can I add
That
a
will be
point
valuable
quickly?
inputs for supply. Sure, Jinal. Yeah.
You know, from what Pradeep said is absolutely right. There will be adoptions of electrification starting with 2-wheel, 3-wheel, LCVs, buses. Yes. Let's step back a little bit and see what happened when IC engines were introduced, right? You had fuel stations first. to get a comfort for the customers to buy IC engine based vehicles. And this is the same psychology that needs to be adopted here as well, that the infrastructure has to be visible and not to be worried about after buying. So we are a couple of steps away from that. And if you draw parallels of wherever electrification has happened successfully, those are the countries where there has been heavy incentivization, heavy infrastructure focus, and both of the things are a long way to go here today. So for us, I would still say for a foreseeable future, we will be IC driven engine market. And even if you're looking at two-wheel, three-wheel penetrations, what are we talking about in a 20 million production? You're looking at 2 or 3% or 4% kind of electrifications, right, to begin with. So from supplier's perspective, yes, you need to get prepared. Of course, you need to research, adopt, and implement, and the time is now, because inflection point may be earlier than what we anticipate, driven by regulatory norms and driven by changes of rising fuel prices that on day to day. So these are two triggers which may change the inflection points earlier than what we envisage.
Brilliant, Tim. Thank you so much. Yep. I probably have one last question where I take opinion from two of our panelists. We usually end with a question over the long term, but since we've been primarily discussing about a 3 to 5 year time frame, we're going to end with a very short term kind of a perspective. Considering the COVID times, transporters are obviously facing additional challenges in terms of driver and labor availability, and also reduced freight rates, low margins. So how can digitalization and technology provide a short-term relief to fleets and transporters? What do you think they should be doing right away to help and better their businesses? Mr. Mohit and Mr. Anjani, if you can share your views, we will conclude with the same. Yeah, Mr. Mohit, you want to go first?
Mandal, you want to take a shot first?
Yeah, sure. So number one, it's already happened, and the reason it happened is that those who continue to survive and those who are electronically connected to those who are electronically connected to the end customer, they got better prices because the customer was paying top dollars for being able to make sure that they could have their materials on the shelf. As you know, during the COVID times, FMCG, food, agriculture were the prime focus areas. And in what you would call as staples, the costs are very high for logistics as a percentage. For all the others, it's not so much. For FMCG packaged goods, the percentage is lesser. It's more important to have that there. They pay top dollars to everyone to keep their lights on. And digital players like ourselves were able to do that, respond to the customer expectation, respond to their adaptability, and those who were connected with us on our platform or could take onto our platform were the ones who won. Their freight rates are actually higher than before, and customers are paying higher than before.
Right.
The reality of today. What will happen in 1.5 months when the moratorium is over? It's all speculation. My bets lay on 30% are stepping out of the total population. Within the next 3 to 4 months, the journey will start from the day the moratorium ends within 1 month of that and will end by March 2021. 30% of long distance trucks will be off the road.
My God. Okay, right. That is a very ominous sign, Mr. Anjani. Yeah. Mr. Mohit, your review.
It will be very good for the industry. You will be surprised.
Right. I understand. Right.
I see that. I obviously see that I think the focus on intracity movement will continue to be very high as e-commerce takes center stage. So, and obviously within that, those who are connected sharply with digital systems will get the orders and will have the efficiencies to be able to service this well. Fuel costs are high, so everybody's advised to take care that you're efficient in that aspect as well. But thanks for this is shocking. 30% you foresee going out of circulation. So great.
I tend to be exaggerated a bit because that's a trend which is.
No, he's right in a way, because almost 80% of those are NBFC financed, and with no business, it's going to be difficult for them to sustain. Unfortunately, there is no magic wand for any revival or any guidance that we can give for small fleet operators, because this is an industry which is directly linked to the economic performance. The moment someone says that we are going to see a negative growth of GDP, that speaks a lot. You do not need many trucks to carry the freight. Very simple. So there will be more trucks unutilized for a foreseeable future, and that's a natural outcome. So I completely agree with Mr. Anjani. Moment the moratorium wand is gone, I think so we'll see a lot more bankruptcies. Unfortunate situation, but it's time for showing agility, consolidations, getting more technologically advanced, and the risk mitigation that you can take cue from all these that's happened. That's my two piece of.
Brilliant. Yeah. So thank you so much. Thank you, especially Jinal, putting a positive touch on a very gloomy picture to end the story. But these are ground realities. We must all live with it. I think being part of this sector. But as we say any day, I think the medium to long-term future is still intact. The Indian trucking industry has a very bright future. I mean, I'm sure all of you would agree. It's just we're waiting for the times to change. That is the same. Thank you so much for taking your time out, to all of you to be part of our panel discussion. Pradeep, Mohit, Dipen, and Anjani, and Jinal, as always, thank you so much for being here to moderate this discussion, taking it forward in the right way. We've received a lot of many more questions we couldn't address. We'll probably keep them for a future session. A number of very encouraging and positive feedback and appreciation as well. That belongs to all of you for the engaging discussion that came out. So thank you very much once again, and until a future session where we again try to meet, bye-bye, and stay safe. Yeah.
Thank you, Bala. Thank you, panelists. Take care.